Now, congregants, let's shift our gaze. We've seen the power of the blood to break a curse, and we've seen the authority of the word to raise the dying. But what about the Monday morning struggle? What about when the stomach is growling and the mailbox is full of final notice stamps? Some folks think God is too holy to care about your bank account. They think he's up there counting stars while you're down here counting pennies. But Brother Hagin used to say, "My Father is the richest person in the universe. If he can hang the stars, he can surely put steak on your table." Kathryn Kuhlman often said that the greatest miracles aren't always the ones that happen in a crusade. They are the quiet provisions that happen in a kitchen when a believer refuses to panic. Let me tell you about Martha, not the Martha from Silas's house, but another Martha, a widow who lived in the dust-choked plains of Oklahoma in 1934. The ledger of the widow's oil. The dust didn't just sit on the furniture, it lived in the air. It was a gray, gritty ghost that haunted every corner of Martha Vance's farmhouse. Martha was 42 years old, and for the last 2 years, she had been fighting a war on 2 fronts, the Great Depression and the Great Drought. Her husband, Caleb, had been taken by the dust pneumonia a year prior, leaving her with a mortgage she couldn't pay, a tractor that wouldn't start, and 3 children whose ribs were beginning to show through their shirts. It was a Tuesday morning. The banker, a man named Mr. Henderson, who wore a suit that cost more than Martha's entire herd of cattle, had visited the day before. "I'm sorry, Martha," he had said, though his eyes weren't sorry at all. "The bank is calling in the notes. You have until Friday at noon to produce $40, or we seize the land. And don't bother asking for an extension. The bank doesn't trade in mercy, we trade in currency." $40. In 1934, in the middle of a dust bowl, that might as well have been 40 million. The inventory of faith. Martha walked to her pantry. She did what Brother Hagin always suggested. She took an inventory, not just of what she had, but of what God had. On the shelf sat a half bag of flour, a jar with 2 tablespoons of lard, and a small tin box. She opened the tin. Inside were 3 copper pennies. 3 cents, Martha whispered. And a world of debt. She sat at her scarred oak table and opened her Bible. Her eyes fell on the story of the widow in 2 Kings 4. The prophet asked her, "What hast thou in the house?" And she had nothing but a pot of oil. Martha closed her eyes. "Lord," she prayed, "I don't have a pot of oil. I have 3 cents and enough flour for 1 more batch of biscuits, but I have your word. And your word says that if I give, it shall be given unto me good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over." Now, some people would say Martha was being foolish. They'd say, "Save those 3 cents, buy a handful of beans." But Martha knew the law of the seed. You don't eat your seed, you sow it. The traveling evangelist. That evening, a beat-up Model T Ford chugged into the yard. Out stepped a man with a worn Bible and a dusty hat. He was a traveling evangelist, heading toward a tent meeting 3 towns over. "Sister," he said, tipping his hat. "I hate to bother a soul, but I'm out of gas, and my stomach is whistling. I don't have a dime to my name, but I have a message from the Lord for whoever feeds me." Martha's flesh screamed, "Send him away! You barely have enough for the kids." But her spirit whispered, "This is your ground. Sow the seed." Martha invited him in. She used the last of the flour and the lard to make a pan of biscuits. She served him the best she had, while she and the children ate thin porridge. When he rose to leave, Martha went to the tin box. She took those 3 pennies, her entire net worth, and pressed them into the evangelist's hand. "This is for the work of the gospel," she said, her voice steady. The man looked at the pennies, then at Martha's tired face. He didn't say, "Thank you." He stood up, placed his hand on the wooden doorframe of the kitchen, and said, "Widow, the Lord says the oil is already in the house. You just haven't looked under the floor." Then he drove away. The sound in the night. That night, a storm rolled in. It wasn't a rainstorm, it was another black roller. A dust storm so thick it blocked out the stars. The wind howled around the eaves of the house like a banshee. Martha lay in bed, praying. Lord, you sent the man. You took the seed. Now, I'm looking for the harvest. Around 2 a.m., she heard it. A strange rhythmic thumping coming from the barn. It wasn't the wind. It sounded like something was trying to punch its way through the earth. Martha grabbed a kerosene lantern and wrapped a wet cloth around her face. She fought her way through the swirling grit to the barn. Inside, the cows were lowing in distress. She walked to the center of the barn, near the old dry well that had been boarded over years ago. The boards were vibrating. A dark, thick liquid was seeping through the cracks, smelling of sulfur and ancient earth. It wasn't water. It was black gold. In her desperation, Martha hadn't realized that the shifting of the earth during the drought, combined with the pressure of the recent tremors, had cracked a cap on a shallow oil pocket directly beneath her property. The Ledger of Heaven. By Friday morning, the dust had settled. At 11:55 a.m., Mr. Henderson pulled into the yard. He had the foreclosure papers on a clipboard, ready for her signature. I assume you don't have the $40, Martha, he said, stepping out of his car and adjusting his tie. Martha walked out onto the porch. She wasn't wearing her work apron. She was wearing her Sunday best. She held out an envelope. There's $40 in there, Mr. Henderson, she said, and another $60 to pay off the next 6 months in advance. Henderson's jaw dropped. He opened the envelope. Inside were crisp bills. Where? How? Did you rob a stagecoach? No, Martha smiled. I just realized I had a partner with better currency than yours. And Mr. Henderson, don't go near the barn. There's a crew from the Sinclair Company coming out this afternoon to talk about a lease. Henderson looked toward the barn, where a thick, black puddle was reflecting the Oklahoma sun. He turned pale, got into his car, and drove away without another word. The 100, fold return. Martha didn't just save the farm. She became the storehouse for the entire county. During the worst years of the Depression, the Vance farm was the only place where the smoke never stopped rising from the chimney. She bought crates of flour by the ton. She opened a soup kitchen in her barn, the very place where the oil had first broken through. She lived by a simple ledger. On one side, she wrote, "What I gave." On the other, she wrote, "What God multiplied." She taught her children, never hold on to your 3 cents so tightly that God can't put $1 million in your hand. The seed has to leave your hand, but it never leaves your life. It just goes into your future to wait for you.